This summer past, we journeyed to Prague, Czechoslovakia, to attend the International Transpersonal Conference, a meeting of philosophers, psychologists, anthropologists, writers, ecologists, and thinkers on global subjects. Throughout the conference, we were able to track down and interview some of the movers and shakers whose ideas and hopes will shape the new millennium. Prague was a fitting venue for this meeting, poised as it is at the center of European crisis and promise. It is a metaphor for the transformation of the planet and of human psychology that must take place if we are to provide a sane future for our children. I'm standing in the center of one of Central Europe's most beautiful and mysterious cities. This is Prague, Czechoslovakia, and I'm Terence McKenna. We're here to meet with some of the world's most outstanding thinkers to discuss science, spirituality, and the mounting global crisis. And it's fitting that we should meet in this, the capital of ancient Bohemia, for Prague and Bohemia have always stood for intellectual innovation, chance-taking, and the life of ideas. In the Jugendstil splendor of one of Prague's most famous concert halls, we encountered Richard Alpert and persuaded him to have lunch with us. Alpert, who now calls himself Ram Dass, is one of the most enduring figures from the American cultural upheaval of the 1960s. Alpert, whose career reaches from Harvard University to the plains of the Punjab, has transformed himself into a spokesman for humanity's ignored and downtrodden. And Ralph Abraham was sitting across the table watching me have this conversation, and when after Steiger left, Ralph leaned over to me and he said, "So you see, Terence, the mushroom is telling you that it can reach out and touch you anywhere." And I thought that was amazing.
Well, anytime you would like to or feel that you'd have the time to guide me through anything at all, I'd be happy to be your...
Excuse me, sir. You are not the famous Terence Mushroom McKenna. That is you, my friend.
It is.
I am aware of.
That's him.
It is.
Oh, how wonderful! Yes, pleased to welcome you on our Bohemian highway here. I especially bring you very good black coffee and espresso. And if you may tell me, who is the attractive elderly gentleman you brought on your side, on your companionship here?
This is Mr. Dass.
Oh, the MS Dawes, yes.
No, the Ram Dass.
Oh, the CD-ROM.
The CD-ROM, yes.
Oh,
CD-ROM Dass.
The LSD
Dass. Yes, the one,
How
yes.
wonderful. Take this, it will be making you very bohemian. And this...
I am so happy to be in your fair country.
Oh, my country, very fair, and happy to have the LSD experience. You know, you
What is your name? What is your name?
My name is Waiter.
Waiter, how do you do, Waiter? A pleasure.
Yeah, see you, Waiter. Okay.
See you later.
You don't think there's any... It would needs the external form of the mushroom.
It would never have happened for me. I only argue from my own experience.
Yeah, but you and I were both so thick in crap when it had, you know, that's why we needed it.
Well, but there are a few others out there. We didn't corner the market on being thick in crap.
Yeah, but I'm talking about somebody like a Ramana Maharshi or somebody like that.
Oh, well, these people.
Know, I mean, there are people.
Sure, but the idea is not to come up with something that the best among us can make hay with, but a democratic, something which addresses the species. The thing that seemed to me so important about the psychedelic experience was that it happened to me. I wasn't reading John Chrysostom or Meister Eckhart.
Exactly.
Of course those guys...
Right on. It happened to me. It happened to me, yes.
And so
Yeah.
I assume that I am a very ordinary person. Therefore, if it happened to me, it could happen to anyone, and that's really
That's a questionable.
something.
That was a set of assumptions there. One, that you're a very ordinary person, and whether the same chemical given to a dozen people would bring about 11 other people like
Similar
this, and I think it would be the outcome would be very different. And that's what I keep getting cast into an evolution of consciousness model about individuals, because there's such marked individual differences as to 3 people come before my guru, one completely goes, and the other 2 get a chapati. And people take psilocybin, and some go like that, and they go like that, and some go like that.
Well, don't you think a good metaphor for it would be sexuality? Apparently there are some people who can kind of take it or leave it, and others of us, it rears its ugly head with great presence. Yet everybody has to
I
come
notice
to
as I get
terms
older,
with
I
it.
move from one of these categories to the other. It leaves so much space in my life. I don't know what to do with my free time.
I hope it never happens to me.
Just clinging. Just clinging.
No, just aspiring to cling. Actually, I live the life of an ascetic. It's my aspirations that are pulling me down. Well, see, the nice thing about this evolutionary argument is that you can sort of make the snake take its tail in its mouth.
Exactly.
Because
Exactly. It does.
the escape is not into some science fiction future.
No.
It's into an archaic recursion of some sort. We once knew everything we need to know.
Yeah.
So what we are trying to find out is lost knowledge, not new knowledge. And if you direct people back toward 10,000, 20,000 years ago, they see a kind of completion, that an open-ended future is...
It seems to me it's a confusing thing to use time in that way, because it makes the artifacts of that period seem to be valued as opposed to the artifacts of this period. And it seems to me that, I mean, whether you call it not science fiction, but science fiction can also be very compassionate. It can be very historically relevant. It doesn't have to be... it's just using a different set of artifacts to work with, so...
Well, for instance, I see most of what's happened in the 20th century as being unconsciously driven by this fascination with the archaic.
Fascination with the archaic.
Yes, I mean...
Wow, that was... of all the things I predicted you'd say, it wasn't that. Tell me what...
Well, for instance, Impressionism deconstructs the hard image of realism and gives you a feeling toned thing, which was very antithetical to Victorian Edwardian thought. Then Freud and Jung describe different aspects of the unconscious, but to do it, Freud has to talk about repressed, primitive sexual imaginings. Jung talks about folklore, fairy tales, and mythology. Meanwhile, the Dadaists and the Surrealists are saying we have to break up the linear expectations of the bourgeois mind. And then you get at Jackson Pollock and those people who say the image itself has to be thrown out. And then, to my mind, the psychedelic thing in the 60s, based on rock and roll and a boundary-dissolving psychedelic, we, almost by a random walk, are finding our way toward shamanism, tribalism, nomadism.
Go beyond the isms to find out, tell me what we're really finding.
We're finding a world made out of mind rather than stuff.
Great, okay, we're finding a world made out of mind. Every time you describe which mind you find, that's just a limiting condition. I mean, if we just find the thing of mind-created stuff, live in that, then what happens?
Well, I mean, there is a transcendental dimension beyond language. It's just hard as hell to talk about it.
But if you live in it and talk from there, then the forms that it will manifest in become just the forms it manifests in. It's nothing more or less than that.
So you mean you download the unspeakable into language and let the chips fall where they may?
Well, they don't fall where they may. They fall in a perfectly harmonious pattern.
Well, that's them falling where they may.
Where they may, where they will.
Yeah. Well, so what I'm hearing from you is you have a very strong sense of the pattern, strong enough that your necessarily limited personal viewpoint doesn't tend to get in the way. You can always push the reset to hope button, and then you hope, almost on principle.
Trunk has said to me, stand halfway between hope and hopelessness. I thought that was very useful.
And is that,
No.
what is it? It's
It's the ecstasy of total horror and total beauty at the same moment. That's what I feel again and again, Terence. When I'm with somebody dying of AIDS, my God, my heart's breaking. It's horrible. I mean, it's a ghastly the social ostracization, this, that, opportunistic illness and everything. And there's another part of me that's giggling. And I can hardly handle the multifrenia of it all, the sense of the perfection of it all, and the beauty of the moment, and the horrible shit of it, you know?
Well, it all is spun together. Is that because you feel confident that the self is somehow indestructible, or because you don't even ask that question?
You got to watch the words indestructible, because that has a time dimension. I mean, I think that awareness is that.
But for example, do you think this is the stage upon which all acts are performed, or that we move up
this is
and
one of the
down
stages.
many levels?
Oh, probably infinite number. Because I just look into two minds and I see two different ones. And those are all on just this one. No, I feel like I have this friend Emmanuel, you know, this spook that has no body. And Emmanuel's two lines to me were, death is absolutely safe, first thing. That's a very profound statement. And the next thing he said, it was like taking out the tight shoe. And then I said to him, Emmanuel, what am I doing here? Who made this error? What am I doing on this plane? He said, you're in school, why don't you try taking the curriculum?
And the curriculum is?
Life.
Any life?
It means the exploration of the clinging of mind within the world of projected form.
So the exploring life.
It's the exploring life with it's purposive in the sense of returning back into the Garden of Eden. It's a return. There is a return metaphor underlying all of it.
And I'm sure you're asked this all the time, so am I. Maybe we give different answers. Do you think that this can be done without psychedelics fast enough to have an impact on the global situation?
I could conceive that it could be, yeah. You asked, do I think? I don't really have an opinion whether it will or won't, but I could see it go either way. Well, I mean, like John Seed said to me, it's too late as far as the rainforests are concerned. He says the inertia is too great in the whole system. It's too late. So I said, okay, John. I mean, it was the first time somebody said it to me just like that. He said, it would take a miracle. I said, oh. That threw me back on whatever that was. And then he said, but after all, he said, we came up out of the ocean, came onto land. He said, we have quite a lineage of miracles. I wouldn't underestimate us. That was a nice one.
Well, so my question to you is, are psychedelics a miracle?
Psychedelics are a miracle, yes. They may not be the only miracle.
Are they the miracle we need?
I don't know that. I don't know that. I think they may have already done what they were to do.
Really? That's interesting.
I think
I've never heard anybody
I think
say
what is done is so much more powerful than anybody yet recognizes. See, I see all this destruction is just the process of transformation. The question is whether we keep it together in the process of transformation. And that's why all I'm interested in doing is becoming a person and helping others become a person who, in the process of the dramatic stuff, will keep some equanimity and there's some love and some presence in that process. But that's psychedelics may play a role in that. Mm-hmm. So you're right. That comes back to your question.
Well, see, my assumption in trying to think about thousands of psychedelic trips rather than just mine, what they seem to do generically is they seem to dissolve boundaries.
Yes.
And the ego is in the business of creating, maintaining, and defending boundaries. So I really see the psychedelics as directly intervening in the core process which is running us over the edge, which is our inability to emotionally connect with the consequences of what we're doing. If for a single moment we could feel what we're doing, we would stop.
I understand.
But we do not.
It's interesting because you take images that all of us know of the girl running down the street naked in Cambodia, you know, or something like that, and we say that wasn't strong enough. It won the Life of the Year award, but it wasn't strong enough. It didn't stop everybody and say, "Holy shit, what are we doing here?" You know? So what would be strong enough to do that? And you say, well, psychedelics, but it's in a one-on-one thing. I mean, we're talking major game players at this moment. Put China into your computer. You know,
how do you deal with that?
I mean, either you're spraying it, or it's water, or it's some other level of consciousness that does it. There is a certain level of trauma that's possible that can soften the ground. Right? Not 3 Mile Island and not Chernobyl, but I mean, I don't want to create this with my mind, but I can imagine a certain trauma, like in Marin when they ran out of water. It was interesting. Suddenly all the ego barriers and everything, and neighbors were talking who'd never even met each other.
People were taking showers together.
Yeah, exactly. A whole process was happening. I'm sure marriages, babies were conceived, everything as a result of that trauma, of that denial. So a massive, significant trauma. I just got to tell you one scary image. There's a saint in India who lived up to about 1930, I think, or something. And one of his devotees said to me, one night he was sort of looking off in the distance, and he said, there'll come a time, he said, when you'll walk 5 miles, and he said, you'll sight the light from a fire of another person, and you'll be so happy to know another person exists.
Quite a prediction.
Isn't that quite a prediction? Yeah. It's in there. It's just in there somewhere, you know.
Interesting. Yes, well, I agree. I think that what's going to happen is that...
Gentlemen, everything is fine with the evolution of coffee and consciousness. Both very good with you too.
You have come just at the right time.
Yes,
this is just what I want. How did you know? You tuned into a higher level.
A higher level.
A higher level.
High, very high, yes. I eat Bohemian mushroom soup today, you know?
We were just talking about that.
Oh, yes. You like Bohemian mushroom soup?
I like mushroom.
Let me sprinkle liberally some water on your chalice, sir.
Oh, please,
that is,
liberally sprinkle his chalice,
yes,
for sure.
Very good.
I am a cellist, so it's fine if you wish to.
Oh, I know you by your true name. You're Mr. Chalice, sir. Yes, very good. You also some water in your... No. I was confused. Let me put this here. And have fun with the shaman strudel. Bohemian, very good.
Thank you very much.
You call when things are getting dangerous.
I'll call you.
I'll be right back.
Not to worry.
Good.
Can I ask you a personal question?
You can ask me anything you'd like, Terence.
It's not a personal question to you. It's a personal question from me. How do you like having the projection of special identity constantly laid on you?
It's a sadhana. It's my practice.
That's a good answer. Although you didn't say how you liked it.
I like it to the capacity I have to transpose it if I can't, I mean, sometimes these are going very fast, and to just keep it transposed, then I love it. I love it. It's like a fire. If the minute I start to lose it, it's a fucking drag. It really is. Because, I mean, you know, I was in a situation in Miami where all these women with blue eyes and coiffured hair were grabbing at the buttons of my jacket. And I thought, oh, I don't want this. Whatever this life is, I don't want to be part of this. I mean, this is, they eat your flesh, finally.
Sure.
But I realize at any time, I can walk away from it. And it's my, you know, I'm a free agent.
So do you never get in a situation where you say, gee, I'd like to do X, but Ram Dass would never do that?
My stock and trade, or my coinage, is in sharing just those predicaments publicly. See, I've turned it into, right?
You've managed to, but public confession is the subtlest form of wastrelry.
Of wastrel, yes.
I do it myself. Say, I'm not a good guy, don't follow me, I'm a bad guy. Then I leave the stage and say, now I can really be a bad guy.
Come up and see my holy pictures. That's one of my lines in my lecture. I'll tell you, I only see the stuff that would disturb me is inside myself. It has nothing to do with out there. Out there is just being what it is, and I'm responding with my own stuff. And if my stuff is my enemy, it's going to get too much for me. And if it isn't, you know, depends on how much I can consume it, joyfully participate in it, passionately, all of it.
Well, you've sort of achieved a unique synthesis. I mean, you're almost a secular holy man, because I don't care much about what you believe or who you light candles to. Basically, I think I heard you describe yourself once as a kind man. And you've gotten incredible mileage out of that because there are so few.
It's far out.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is...
Well, when you talked about coming back into the boundarylessness, to me, that's the whole quality of compassion. It has that boundarylessness to it. It's that your suffering's my suffering, and your joy's my suffering, and you are me, and here we are. And if you hurt, I'm responding to your hurt, not because I'm a good guy and you're needful, just because this is suffering, and this is the response to suffering. And we're both part of the same thing. And that's the way I like to play it from. That's, to me, it's like riding a wave. It's the joy of just being part of the force of compassion in the universe.
Well, when you look, you mentioned in your talk the other night, since some people think the 90s are going to be a second turn of the spiral, I observed the 60s as a spear-carrying 14-year-old. I was down in the masses. What were the mistakes that are avoidable if there's a second chance?
They're inevitably going to be avoided. The first mistake was idealism. The first mistake, and the mistake was thinking that because you had seen it, you could just go like that and everybody else would see it. And you could just say, it's all love, and then everybody would love. I mean, it was a naivete. It was naivete. It was not working on ourselves deeply enough to be without the clinging of mind that made us try to use it. It was our lurking righteousness that got in our way.
Can you make a revolution, though, without an inner righteousness?
That's the far-out question of where would the action come from? And there's this line in Buddhism that says, out of emptiness arises compassion. And what I experience is that there is a way in which I can sit down in front of a truck or feed a person or go make love or go surf, and there is an appropriateness in every one of those acts. And for me to hear that, I've really got to shut up. And my work is to keep shutting up, to hear which one it is. And if it is a revolution, so be it. So be it. You know the story of the monk and the army general, you know, and the army general's disemboweling all the monks? And his reputation has spread far and wide as a cruel, cruel man. And he comes into this village and he says to his adjutant, tell me what's happening. The adjutant said, all the people are frightened, they're bowing down to you. All the monks in the monastery have fled to the hills but one monk. And the general was outraged about this one monk. And he gets up and he goes to the monastery and he pushes open the doors of the monastery and he walks into the courtyard and there's the monk standing in the middle of the courtyard. And he walks up to him and he says, don't you know who I am? I could take my sword and run it through your belly without blinking an eye. And don't you know who I am? I could have your sword run through my belly without blinking an eye.
That's great.
That's the place from which revolutions can heal, rather than just starting the cycle all over again.
Then this is the place we never found in the 60s. I mean, I've always said it was all well
we reduced
and good.
it to revolution and although we had the taste of evolution, we reduced it to revolution.
Well, in the day they came with machine guns, we didn't stand like that monk. Everybody said, well, my God, you could get killed playing this game. And I flew to Laos and India for 3 years.
But already we had produced the they by being so busy being we.
True.
Because so that they even noticed we. The fact that they noticed us was because we were busy making statements instead of just being it.
So maybe, I mean, this is just occurring to me, that being in a place like Prague, the real thing we have to learn here is how to make velvet revolutions, non-confrontational.
Exactly right. Exactly right. That's why I admire Havel so much. That's why he's way up there in my, because he's a compassionate leader. He's got wisdom, not just knowledge. He is tuned. There's a quality of his heart that feels present. And he said in this op-ed article, I just read his letter last month.
I read it too.
And you know, at one point he said, we have to allow the naturalness to come back, the personal stuff, the heart stuff. I mean, he was right there with all of the...
Do you see, I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't. Let me preface it by saying, do you see anybody who could play that role for the millions of kids in England and the United States who are now asking, where do we go from here?
No.
Is that good or bad?
I guess the situation hasn't demanded the emergence of that being it.
Of those kinds of...
Because it can't be anybody that comes forward and says, I'm it.
Oh no, it has to be someone who the people
But the
say,
situation
you're
can
it.
demand the formation. I mean, you watch, does the man make the time or does the time make the man? You know, and you can feel how what took a certain person 20 years, like to ride a bicycle, somebody later on can ride a bicycle like that because the whole culture rides bicycles. There's some, like, process where the situation emerges where the person has to come forward and they're just forced out.
In zekere zin was dit een historische opname, want Terence McKenna is ondertussen overleden en ook Ram Dass is er qua gezondheid niet zo goed meer aan toe. Een van de boeken van Terence McKenna is vertaald in het Nederlands. Food of the Gods, het heet Voedsel der Goden en gaat over de psychedelica en de rol daarvan in de geschiedenis. Dat boek is in beperkte oplage te koop. U ziet het telefoonnummer 6203-219. Laat, als het 's avond laat is, een boodschap achter of bel morgen. En dan nu een andere herhaling. Spotlight.